Welcome to the Tuesday, May 26th meeting. I'd like to do some introductions. To my left, Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, Tom Wooden, our town manager, and Selectmen Tricia Warren, myself, Denise Griffin, Bill Hamblin, and Russ Hoffman. So, moving on, Tom, town manager announcements.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that after running an ad for the final public works position for the last 3 weeks and so, Chris Lehman and I are both in agreement that we'd like to hire Dale Hahn as the final full-time person in public works. Dale has been working for us on and off through the years. Anyway, he's working for us right now as a seasonal, worked with us all through the winter, has a Class A driver's license, and of the applicants that we got, he was clearly the top of the list. So I would just want to inform the board. I know we don't have to get the appointment for him, but I just want to inform the board that was who we recommended. So.
Great.
On another note, I sent around today some information on the fish pier piling replacement. As you know, we have a variety of pilings underneath the fish pier in the general location at the front of Atlantic Edge that some of which are near the end of their life, some of have already gone past the end of their life. And so we ran an RFP for that for the last 3 weeks in 3 different papers. Several companies expressed interest, but only one returned an RFP for it. And that was Proc Marine, and I think I put copies of that in front of you. In talking with the accountant for the town who does the auditing for us, we don't have enough cash reserves in the fish pier account to pay that $107,000. It was their suggestion that, given how serious this is, that structurally that part of the building is in dire straits, that the board authorize using the undesignated fund to cover the cost of that. And as our ordinance suggests, we have to come up with a plan as to how to replenish that undesignated fund. My suggestion for that is to start in the next fiscal year, not the one we just approved, but in the next fiscal year, and start putting money aside to replenish that account. So that's what I have, at least for fixing that.
Do we have any sense that this one and only bid is of a reasonable magnitude?
I'll be honest with you, when I've quoted it out with other companies, Proc is usually at the high end of that scale.
Yeah, I don't know the company that well, but my quick reaction is they do top-end work at top-end price.
I would say you're right. And they are familiar with the property. They did do the concrete deck to the north of Atlantic Edge and also the boat ramp. We had work done there in the past, but it was the exterior pilings that were easy to get to. These are all underneath, so it's a much more significant project.
We do have a tenant who's an expert in this field. We might want to touch base with him and see what he thinks.
He has been addressed to do it, but I think that might be out of his scope. So,
But he might have an opinion as to the
sure.
sensibility of the price.
Yep.
I'm leery with only one response.
One bid, yeah.
That we're taking the right course of action, and I understand, I agree that this work has to be done, but I think we've got 2 weeks to do this.
Yeah, I think probably the hesitancy with some of these was our time frame was pretty compressed, and it is a pretty complicated job to do it all underneath.
Yeah, it's tough to work underneath. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I have no problem, doing a little more conversations with some other people and report back at the next meeting for that. That's fine.
That would be my inclination.
I think it would be helpful to have, particularly where we didn't get any real local bids, and everybody may be too busy right now, and if that's the case, that's great for them. But it'd be nice to just make sure that we're not getting fleeced. That's my only hesitation.
Right.
I want to make sure we're paying the right amount.
And we have to balance that with the fact that this isn't something we can delay a long time, because if you do go underneath the fish pier, you'll see it's something that we need to address. So, okay. So
Tom, would we take the entire amount out of undesignated funds, or?
Yes.
So there's no money to use in the fish pier account at all? is what you're
Keep in mind,
saying.
we spent a lot of money out of the fish pair account
Yep.
last year.
Yep.
And last year, the fish pair account was in the red by $4,000. So it doesn't have high rental incomes there. It probably wouldn't support paying back a loan to this, plus you'd be adding on interest to this as well. So that doesn't really make a
Well,
lot of sense there.
over the years, the fish pair account will replenish itself as we get
It will.
to later years, but it will be quite some time.
Right, right. I mean, I think we talked about a variety of scenarios, and this seemed to be the most plausible in that it would be relatively painless if you spread it out over several years. So,
Do they have an estimated time roughly of what we're looking at for how long this has to be done?
based on the quote I have here, it was mid to late August. Yeah, because they have to order materials and so forth.
And then, because some of the pilings were done last year or the year before, recently.
Some of the exterior
Some of the
ones.
exterior ones were done recently. When do you foresee is the next time another batch of pilings needs to be replaced?
Well, we look at those all the time, and we replace those fairly regularly as far as that. But the ones that are there, most of them are in pretty good shape. So you may have to replace 4 or 5 here and there. But pilings tend to last, 10 to 15 years before you have to replace them, at least on the exterior. There's a lot of pilings underneath the fish pier that are old abandoned pilings. You can tell they just come in and put new ones in and leave the old ones. But there's enough of these load-bearing pilings that are either past their functional life, or some of them actually aren't even connected to the ground. So it's pretty important.
And it was a very tough winter.
Yeah.
There are a lot of waterfront structures that are not well connected to the ground this spring.
Right. So I'll keep you posted on that. We'll talk about it at the next meeting.
That would be good.
Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention is, we're getting to a time where we're going to have to talk about Annalee Rosenblatt's contract, and we talked about updating our personnel manual and some other things, union negotiations and things like that. I was able to get a proposal from a woman named Laurie Burchard, who's in Jefferson, Maine, that does those type of things as far as updating personnel manuals and things such as that. I don't expect any decisions tonight, but I just want to let you know I got that, and I'll be sending that off to you so you can review it, and we'll look at it at the next meeting. So,
Okay. And I think when it comes to Annalee's contract, there was a suggestion that we go into executive session
okay,
later to discuss it.
all right, that's fine. That's all I have right now.
When do we need to vote to accept the gift of the harbor master boat?
Oh, I was going to bring that up. Thank you. Thank you. I'm actually meeting with him tomorrow morning. He has just arrived back in town.
Okay,
And I'd appreciate if the board would do that this evening
okay.
so that we can act. I'd forgotten that. Thank you.
Well, no time like the present.
I move that we vote to accept the gift of a new or a used harbor master boat. I so move.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
So, question, do we have an idea of maintenance costs?
Well, it's going to be different than what we have now. So really, do I? No. In some regards, they're going to be lower because we just spent a fair amount of money on the previous harbor master boat to refurbish it and buy a new engine.
Yep.
This boat has twin 150s that both have 200 hours on them, so that's pretty low for outboard engines. As far as obvious cosmetic work, so forth, that needs to be done, the hull needs to be refinished. It's an aluminum boat, so it's just sanding down the paint and repainting it. But other than that, the boat seems to be structurally sound. We had a survey from February on it, so I'm fairly confident that the expenses won't be extraordinary. I mean, they'll be a little more than the little boat we have now, but I won't be able to tell you that until we go through a boating season.
Any other discussion? No? Okay, well, let's vote. All in favor? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, so, financials. Julia?
Okay, before you have your total revenue and total expenses, total revenue year-to-date, $7,192,690.19. Total expenses year-to-date, $7,107,739.55. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue and expenses? We are waiting for several state reimbursements to catch up with themselves. I reached out to DEP today for their compound boat reimbursement, and we're about $25,000 waiting on for state revenue sharing as well, so that should be coming in the month of June. So I expect the gap to close in on the revenue side. And total accounts payable tonight, $33,227.04. The bank balance is $2,074,538. And we're about 97% taxes collected year to date, so we're roughly $200,000 for uncollected taxes that hopefully will come in before, I think we're leaving around June 10th, so it's coming. And I did begin my preliminary audit last week, so I have been supplying the auditors with information starting last week. It is underway.
You happy with the way things are?
Yes, I am.
Good.
Julia, you just mentioned a number that looks different than the number that I have. You said accounts payable 32 something?
$33,227.04.
Oh, okay. 227.4. Okay, this one
Oh,
says
you are correct.
33,815.
The prepaid total didn't come down, the $588.57.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on the financials? So I think we should all be very pleased that we're in good shape for this far into the year. So moving on to the consent agenda, which is approving the minutes of the May 11th meeting. I think as with the revisions incorporated into them as
And Kelly was able to do that this
emailed.
afternoon. So.
Excellent.
Thank you, Kelly.
Excellent. And were there any other adjustments to the minutes that need to be made? No?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor? All right, excellent, thank you. So, old business, first item under old business is sign warrant for town meeting.
Which I have here, which is for the June 8th meeting at 6 p.m. to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $22,842 for the regional ambulance service account, and also to see if the town will vote to authorize municipal officers to reallocate the existing harbor master boat reserve account after July 1st, 2015, under such terms and conditions they deem advisable.
Quick interruption. Could we reallocate that to the fish pier?
It-
No?
If that passes, why not?
Yeah.
Not the way the due to from account is. The reason we're able to do the enterprise account is because we're paying it back, but if the money was to permanently go there, like Brandon said today, it has to be allocated to the general fund or the fish pier account.
Okay, so that warrant article
That warrant-
does not remove it from the general fund?
Exactly.
Got it. Sorry.
I did have the same thought myself this afternoon when I saw that RFP, I'm like, yeah.
So we need a motion to sign these at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so we've,
Moved that we sign the warrant as written?
Second.
okay, all in favor? All right. We'll include that with all the other warrants. All right. The second item on the agenda is, this says sign the economic development agreement, but I think really it would be to formally accept and then sign the economic development agreement.
So moved.
And seconded.
Okay, any other discussion? So I think this is the kind of the result of probably a good 6 to 7 months worth of work with the BBH Selectmen, and I think it's great work and a step in the right direction. Any other discussion?
It might just be worthwhile for the audience to indicate what this document does is agree to set up a committee that has representation from both Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor, and also from the Chamber and other interested parties, to go ahead and actually do some nitty-gritty work on economic development rather than just talking about doing work on the economic development. It requires that each town put money into a pot for economic development, which we voted on at town meeting and have funded, and so has Boothbay. So that will proceed. And I believe it agrees to go on for 12 months unless we decide otherwise, unless one of the towns decides otherwise. So it's not something we're casting in stone, it's irrevocable.
And earlier in the year, we advertised for volunteers to be on the committee, and several people submitted applications, and not many, so several were selected to be on the committee. And once we find out who Boothbay has selected to be their volunteers, because we don't know that yet, then we'll be able to set a meeting date for the committee to meet formally for the first time. So I think that will be very exciting.
And each select board will have a representative on that committee as well.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think Wendy agreed to be that?
She did. She did raise her hand to take on that work, so.
Right.
Keeping in the tradition of the person who
one
was
who's
not
not
here.
Yeah, no, she truly did raise her hand. She's really interested in that work, and that's great, so. Wonderful. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of
Yeah.
signing the agreement, right? So, it's a vote. So we'll sign that later. Okay, Tom, we have
Yeah, I think at the last
finalized.
meeting, I gave everyone a draft of the request for proposals for investment management services. And I think some of you came back with some tweaks to it, which I have incorporated into the document. And I have the document here, nothing else is changing it except for the suggestion. I think it was you, Bill, was it not, that had the suggestion on this?
Yeah.
But the only thing that I don't have in here are dates to send it out, but other than that, it's all as it was before. So if the board is comfortable with that, I would plug in some dates in this and mail this out to a variety of places and advertise it and see what we get back.
There are still a few typos to clean up in at least the version that I have, but nothing of substance.
All right, no problem. Other than that, is everything all right with it?
Yeah, I think so.
I
Okay.
We're good with it.
I think it was good. I mean, I think it's, it gets us going in that direction, and, you know, exactly what happens after this will kind of all remain to be seen,
Okay.
so.
Bill, if you have a marked up version or just want to send it to me in an email tomorrow or something, that'd be great.
Sure.
Let's make those
I'll
changes.
give this to you at the end of the meeting.
That's fine.
How long are we giving for proposals? When's the,
How long would you like? I haven't put the dates
you haven't
in.
put that in?
Yeah.
I would think that, is 30 days too long?
No, it's fine.
That sounds reasonable.
It's fine. Okay.
Move we accept this RFP?
Great.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Great. Okay, so next on the agenda is the Lobster Wharf Special Amusement License. So this was something that we tabled from the last meeting. The special amusement license for the Boothbay Lobster Wharf at 97 Atlantic Avenue is for amplified vocal or instrumental music, May through October. There's a diagram with the application. The music would be kind of at the end of the seating area. closest to the wharf. I think it's basically the same area where the music was set up last year, to the best of my recollection anyway. And the application says it's 200 yards to the nearest residence dwelling or lodging and about 1,500 feet from the condos across the street, which are adjacent to the Lobster Wharf parking. So, why don't we, to get discussion started, why don't we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the application from the Booth Bay Lobster Wharf.
Second.
Okay, now, we'll open up to discussion, and there was definitely some discussion about this at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Yes, and if you'd state your name and your...
Henry Vest. I live at 96 Atlantic Avenue, condominium A1. We're the front line of the condos. We're on the end. We're the closest residence to the Lobster Wharf. So we have some general idea of how loud the music is. In our humble opinion, it's not that loud. We sit on our deck and listen to it. We open up the windows and listen to it. It'd be nice to hear Claire de Lune occasionally, or rain, but we're not going to get that. The loudest music we heard last year was further down Atlantic Avenue. But I don't know whether the music exceeds the ordinance level. I haven't metered it with a decibel meter. I doubt anybody in here has. And it would not seem reasonable not to renew their license until you actually have some scientific evidence that they have ignored the ordinance. My recommendation would be that you approve it, buy a couple of the decibel meters, occasionally meter the restaurants or the amusement around the harbor. And if I were an owner, I would also get a couple and have an employee metered occasionally so I could keep my license, because they draw a lot of tourists. Tourists spend a lot of money, it's good for the town. And those of us living on Atlantic Avenue live either across from or near restaurants with music, and it's not going to be silent. The ordinance doesn't require silence. So just a thought from a resident in the area.
Can I just add on to that?
Yes.
Just to add some information to this? I mean, we do have a decibel meter, and just so you know, one of the problems we had with our ordinance was it said that the measurements should be performed at the abutting property line, which was particularly vague because property lines could be within 20 feet or 100 feet away. Bob Hosh has gone around with the noise meter, and I'll have Bob explain some of that to you in a moment. But what we wanted to do is also clarify our procedure on how we take these measurements. Now, this isn't written into the ordinance yet, but it makes sense to do this procedurally, at least through this summer. And that is to say that the measurements should be performed at the abutting property line if possible. If the property line cannot be readily identified, such as down on Pier 1 or places like that, then the measurement shall be taken at the complainant's property at a reasonable location to be determined by the responding police officer. At least that seems to be consistent with how we'd respond to the call. So I just wanted to throw that out. Bob, if you wanted to add some of what you did for research last week, that would be great.
Denise, can I speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah,
May I?
sure, yeah.
I'm going to steal a little of your thunder, Bob, but not much.
You have a lot more knowledge in this area than you do.
First of all, I want to thank Chief Hash because he has done a tremendous amount of work on this issue. He's spoken with chiefs from Falmouth, Yarmouth, Bath, Rockland, Camden, Bar Harbor, Southwest Harbor. He's spoken with the district attorney. He's spoken with the 3 of the businesses that generate music down on the waterfront. He has a decibel meter. He's been around and made measurements and videotaped those, I believe. He's met with management. He's studied acoustics, decibel meters, A and C weightings. He says he knows more now than he ever did before. But really, you've done a tremendous amount of work, and I applaud you for it, and I thank you for it. It's really, it was a very nice job. We also, at the end of the meeting last time, requested the data that we had from last year on noise complaints, and we have that data. And just very briefly, Speaking to Lobster Wharf, the permit that's before us right now, there were 3 complaints last year from May 1st to September 30th. So in my book, 3 complaints over the course of a summer is tolerable, but I'm going to speak to that in a little bit. In all, there were 31 complaints from bars, and I'll just read the data. 11 for Rock Tide, although there were 4 complainants, and one of them complained multiple times, coming up with a total of 11. Herringbones was 4 complaints. Lobster Wharf, as I said, was 3 complaints. Mine Oyster, 6 complaints. McSeagle's, 2 complaints. And the Pier 1 area, undefined as to which bar, was 5 complaints. If you add all of the Pier 1s, that is Pier 1, McSeagle's, Mine Oyster, and Herringbones, there was a total of 17 complaints over the course of the summer. That's about 20 weekends, so it's less than 1 complaint a weekend. And on the east side of the harbor, there were 11 for Rock Tide and 3 for Lobster Wharf, so there were 14 over the course of the summer. We talked a great deal at the last meeting about making measurements, and making acoustic measurements is, it can be a challenging task, and I speak with some experience. For 27 years, I worked for a company that was one of the preeminent acoustics firms in the East Coast, and we did everything from design the Lincoln Center response and Boston Symphony Hall to detect submarines at extreme lengths using acoustics in the ocean. I have a doctorate from MIT in underwater acoustics. Making accurate technical measurements is difficult, and it's difficult because things change very rapidly, and particularly, as we all know from our personal experience, sound over the water can be crystal clear for a half mile or a mile or more, or if the wind changes, it can go away like that. It's very difficult. And I'm going to suggest that a technical approach to our difficulty is perhaps not the best way to go. It's difficult to stand up in court. It's complicated, it can be expensive, and it's ever-changing. And what I'm going to advocate is what I will call a balanced approach, and sort of picking up on what Chairman Griffin said at the last meeting. I would like to see a balance between the businesses and the abutters who have to listen to it. And it seems to me the way to do that is exactly what Tom suggested, and that's measure the level at the people who are listening to the music and see what it is, and accumulate those complaints. And if we get multiple complaints and a lot of complaints from one area or one business, then we will put them on, I'm going to suggest that we put them on record, and if we continue to have a complaint in that area, I'm going to suggest that the select board pull their license for some period of time, a week or a month or something. That's something we can do locally. It doesn't involve the courts. It's well within our authority, I believe. And it will put some teeth into the argument that while we enjoy having the music and we understand it's a downtown active business area, that the abutters have rights as well, and hopefully we can achieve some balance. If we get, I personally think, 20 complaints from one individual is not the same as 20 complaints from 20 different individuals, and the latter case is the one that, to me, should be given some weight and then perhaps addressed. So that's sort of where I sit, and I'm going to suggest that the board adopt a policy that, as Tom kind of outlined, that does that, and we'll track things over the summer. The police department has a sound pressure level meter. We'll make measurements at the complainants. We'll accumulate a database, and if we have a sore thumb that's sticking out, then we will speak with them, and if we continue to have problems, then I'm going to suggest that we pull their license for some period of time. So that's kind of where I sit, and I think that's how we should address the problem.
So, Chief, you've done a lot of work thinking about the process that your department will use over the past couple of weeks. Do you just want to add to what Bill
And that's
summarized?
summed up everything that I can go home now. It was very, very, very well put. We want everybody to be good neighbors. We want to help out. I want a reasonable standard here. So far, when we've done these readings, I have to say the readings are low, and we have done them a few times with live music. Some of these locations were very gracious in allowing the entertainment to play for us, just for us. And yes, I requested specific songs. Yes, that's right. And so far, what we see is it's well under our ordinance. That doesn't mean that certain acts won't be over, and we want to monitor that through the summer. Some of the discussions I've had with these places are, perhaps some of these acts are better off inside if in fact they are going to be loud, but we are going to check them. We've had pretty extensive conversations with all the officers about how to do it, and I don't mind, I've told them I actually don't mind them measuring it from a lot of different sources so that they understand where it would rise to the level of being above our ordinance, etc. Also should mention, after 6 o'clock, it goes down to 70 decibels, which is a big difference. Between 70 and 80, there's a big difference. As Bill will tell you, it actually essentially doubles from 70 to 80. It's not a small leap. So there is the time that some of you folks playing, I know, it does go down a bit. But I don't, at this point, the highest reading we could get, getting pretty close to a live act, was about 64 decibels from 50 feet away. There aren't many of these locations that are within 50 feet of another abutting neighbor.
And it may be we need to tweak our ordinance, but my hope is that by getting data from the complainants along with a level, that we can begin to look and see what makes sense. And a number of people have pointed out that you can get a sound pressure level app for these things, and while they're not totally accurate, it is some objective measurement.
One point to that, because I bumped into a whole load of new sound engineers now.
Yeah.
Our ordinance is DBA.
Yes.
So when you are utilizing your new meter, they're cheap, be sure that it is on that setting, and that is specifically spelled out in the ordinance, which is a difference. The two settings, there is a pretty big difference actually between the two. And we are going to monitor that. Officers are actually writing reports on where they're taking the measurements from. They're talking extensively with complainants about what we're doing. I should also say every one of these businesses that I've spoken with has said, I want to be a good neighbor, we will listen to what you say, turn it down, etc. Every single one of them. We've met with all of them.
So I'm going to reiterate something I said last week, and that is that if residents have complaints about music, then it is incumbent on them to call so that your department and the town has a record of it.
Absolutely. I will mention summer's coming. Everybody knows what comes with summer. Emergencies come first, but we will certainly do our best. I personally have gone and done a lot of these, and I'm willing to continue to do that.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. Palmer, I saw your hand, and then we'll go with Don.
Just a brief suggestion, as the final arbiters, would it not make some sense for one, if not all of you, to make in-person visits and make your own assessment based on your own personal feelings? Never mind a sheet full of numbers.
Excellent idea, absolutely. I'll do that.
Okay, great, thank you. Dawn?
I just want to say, obviously, we're really good neighbors. We do not call very often. We could have called all weekend for Blue Bay Lobster Wharf, which is my understanding. I don't know if their permit was, oh, it was extended? Okay. It was pretty loud. I think what my issue is, we must be a really good location because we're getting blasted from this side and blasted from that side. You can't hear our just little radio music playing. And I don't know, like, where we find a happy medium at our place, because we're not going to, put a megaphone out there to blast it out. We don't want to be bad neighbors because it is very residential where we live. And I know sound travels over water, and we have had people visit us and stand there and go, yeah, I've got it recorded. You can hear it just pounding, and it's way away from us. So, whatever the ordinance are for using the new sound meters to really detect how loud it is pretty misconstruing when you're at our property and we're way away from whatever that 100-yard is or whatever from the nearest neighbor. It's loud, and we want to be good neighbors, we really do. But we pay for our music too, and you can't hear it.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, and I think we're at a point where it's somewhat of a dilemma or a quandary, because the ordinance is what the ordinance is,
Right.
and as I appreciate the fact that that you are trying to be a good neighbor. We're hoping that everybody else will be as well. And the only thing I can say is, the people that have music that is too loud, they're not going to know it's too loud if they don't get feedback.
Right.
And so the feedback either needs to come directly from the residents, or if you're not comfortable with that, call the police, and Chief's team will take care of that.
It's really hard to do that, and I know our neighbors find it really hard to do,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be an annoyance. You really
Well-
don't. And people are having a good time and all that, but we're getting coined now as a honky-tonk town, and that is being quoted.
I think the,
Well,
I-
we're not quite honky-tonk.
well, there,
It's friendly.
well,
What, Dawn,
one conversation at a time, please. Just a minute, Helen.
Dawn, where is your location?
We're at 49 Atlantic Ave, we're right, well, we're off, what's a Lobstock, so we're right off the border. And it just means, you know how like some areas, like it's in a cave? We must be
Sure.
that little cave area.
Sure.
We're one property next, up the street from the road, just
Which,
past the road.
oh, on Sunday afternoons,
Okay.
you literally can't, yeah, you
And,
can't stop.
and as I say,
Well-
it may be we need to rework the ordinances, and that the numbers that there are not what the community wishes to have, but that's a community decision,
Right.
and it's not really our decision or your decision, it's a community
It just
decision.
seems to have changed over the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, one of the things that's very difficult about noise bylaws is noise is a subjective quantity. We can measure the levels accurately, but whether it annoys you or not is a subjective decision. And as, you know, if you hit Claire de Lune at one level, somebody will love it and somebody else won't. And it gets very, that's what, part of what makes it very, very difficult for a technical, what I would call a technical approach.
And when you're there enjoying it and dancing,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
lot of fun. I love
And,
to dance.
and the other thing that happens with noise is once you become sensitized to it, you become more and more sensitized to it.
Of course. But when customers complain, it's just hard.
Yeah, no, as I say, we may need to rework the bylaws to reset the levels that we find acceptable.
Okay, and let me remind people, with the actual motion on the floor here is regarding the Booth Bay Lobster Wharf. So,
Too loud.
okay. All right, and do we have any more specific comments about the Booth Bay Lobster Wharf application for outdoor music? Okay, seeing none, I just want to check with the board here.
did I see a hand?
Do I see a hand? I didn't see a hand
One
before.
thing I'd like to say, the comment was made that things have changed over the last couple of years. I've been playing music at the Booth Bay Lobster Wharf for 5 years. I played with a different band for 3 years down there. I've been playing with Murky Water for over 2 years. Nothing's changed. I play my guitar at the same level at everywhere I play. I never touch my volume control on my amplifier. I never touch the volume control on my guitar. So nothing's changed over the last couple of years. It's been the same way for 5 years that I know of, you know, since I've been down there playing with Todd and Kim. So as far as anything changing, same way with our vocals. Our vocals haven't changed. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, we weren't even loud enough. People said they couldn't hear us on the dock singing, so I don't know where you get off on saying that, you know. So, two rights make wrong? No, but I'm just saying, I've been there 5 years and nothing's changed that I can see. And I'm the one playing the music.
Yes.
Tim Sprague, it's my band that's causing the trouble, I guess, but we, you know, like Gary said, we've been there and we haven't changed a thing. I have my level set on my PA, and I don't touch them. My bass player, yesterday his wife was there, she came and played bass. He went down by the lobster tanks, which is at the other end of the wharf, and he actually had to come and turn it up just a hair so that he could hear his wife sing, because he couldn't hear her down by the lobster tanks. So, I don't know, I know last year after the meeting, Doug Gimbel come down, he had a decimeter, he checked it, it was only 65, and he was standing 20 feet away from me while I was singing. And Ira went up into the parking lot and checked his, he had one on the phone, didn't you, Ira? And I thought he said, what was yours, 50 or 55 or something like that? So I mean, so we checked it 2 places the night after the meeting, or the weekend after the last year's meeting. And we were well below. Tom, you were there Sunday. What did you think? Were we loud?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a funny story, because I didn't plan to show up there, but I did go out to lunch, and Tim was there, and I said, "So, Tim, when are you playing?" He goes, "Oh, in about 10 minutes." I went, I must have had half a dozen people come up to me going, "Where's the decibel meter?" I wasn't there to measure it at all, but I was sitting one picnic table away, listening to it, and I thought it was wonderful. It wasn't too loud. I thought it was great, and I had no trouble talking to people around me. So I observed that, but I didn't show up for that. Just so you know.
Or maybe we got a new grouping.
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. I think I'll just take the opportunity to say that, I hope you'll be, let's hope there isn't any negative feedback this summer, but I hope you'll be open to hearing it from any of Chief Hosh's team if, in fact, they do come visiting some afternoon.
As this gentleman said, I mean, it all counts on which way the wind's blowing, too.
Well, I know, that's what makes this whole topic extremely difficult.
If that wind's blowing northwest, it's not gonna go to Mitch's place.
We never called you.
So.
We never called on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying. We
No,
never
I-
called
Right,
out
right.
their music.
Right, I hear you, that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to
Wasn't us.
refocus the discussion on Lobster Wharf.
Everybody can hear you. Actually, the
Okay.
person that complained isn't here this week.
No, he isn't.
Okay.
Denise,
Yeah.
years ago, I worked with the fire department, we used to run down to Zamples there, and the Portland String Quartet would be down there, and because of the building itself, it would amplify enough. And you could ask Palmer, we had numerous people that would turn around and call, and all those guys they didn't have any amplified music, it was just the building that was amplified. And the same way with Tim and them guys, I believe that probably over there where they're at, it probably is going over there and projecting off the side of that bank and then back across like a big megaphone.
Again, it's a very complicated subject, and that's why I want to get to people and get some information and see if we can't get a balance between it.
Yeah. I think, some people's got do a little bit of understanding, that this is the way it is here. The summer for about 8 or 9 weeks.
Right.
What's the decibel on the Catholic Church chimes down there?
Let's not go there.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
All right. Any other, selectmen, any other discussion on the motion on the table for the Booth Bay Lobster Wharf special amusement license? No? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote to approve. Okay, motion carries.
Hey, wait a minute, I think I'm riding with you.
Okay, moving on to new business, why don't we stay with the topic of licensees? Palmer, if you'll bear with me.
Just wait a second. I'm gonna do one more.
Wait, can you wait? I'm gonna take a couple of things out of order if you don't mind. Okay,
You're in control.
thank you.
You think so, huh?
Okay, so if we move to item 7B, which is the victualer's license for the Rock Tide Inn, which is the basic Class H victualer's license.
I move that we approve the victualer's license application from the Rock Tide.
Okay, great. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that license is approved. And we'll move on now to the special amusement license for application for a permit from the Rock Tide. Let's see, signed by John Sullivan. He's asking for unamplified music, entertainment other than music, amplified music, and dancing. Let's see, wait a minute. May through October, I think for their season, 7 days on the deck, 4 to 7:30, and Sundays, 1 to 5. It's, let's see, what else it says. So that strikes me as a little, well, could be wrong. Is this more than last year's? Last year's, I know, was Sunday
I know it was
afternoons,
Sunday, I
but
don't know about during
I
the
don't know
weekdays.
about during the
This
week,
Sunday?
4 to 7:30 on the deck.
So they've extended it.
They
That-
had steel drums.
Oh, they had steel drums?
They had a steel drum player.
But I don't see Mr. Sullivan here tonight. So is anybody here representing the Rock Tide? Well, I for one would be kind of, I mean, I know what Sunday afternoon 1 to 5 is, but I don't really know for sure what the other
Well, it looks like
6 days of,
seven
or
days on the
7
deck,
days, 4 to
7:30.
7:30 are. Do you, Mitch, do you think it's just?
Right, there was a single high school or just graduated person playing one steel drum from 4 to 7. It was very low key.
Does anybody else know anything about that?
It didn't advertise very well.
But we have to take the application as it's written, and the application is for all 4 classes of music and dancing, all of that time.
And they would fall into the same criteria we just discussed with the poster work.
Sure, I just want everybody to understand and to be totally transparent about it, what the application is for. And, you know, had someone been here from the Rock Tide to answer questions, it would have made for a little bit more businesslike and neighborly conversation, like the owners were here last week from the other restaurants.
Denise, I
Yeah,
think
Mitch.
that you should hold them to the same accountable as we did for Ralph, where he had 1 or 2 people with a guitar, and the restrictions that Ralph agreed to. They have the steel drum player, that's very, very nice. Most people don't even hear it. But if he goes to the 5-piece band with the loud headbanging noise that they have on Sundays, that's not gonna work. Every night for happy hour.
You know, going forward also, if this is going to become a stickling point, you should have something on here saying anyone applying for a special amusement permit should attend the meeting, because they're not required to attend. Sometimes these just go right through and there's no questions.
I think
Other
so.
times they get delayed because
Well,
of the
and
questions.
there's some sensitivity for this one, because we had an issue last year.
It had the greatest number of complaints.
Right.
Well, I'll look from, certainly look from a motion from the board.
So I guess before we, maybe this could turn into a motion, but I guess I'd suggest that we table this until the next meeting and get in touch with Mr. Sullivan and ask him to come and talk to us about just what it is he wants to do. Does that sound reasonable?
That's one approach. The other approach I was thinking is we could put the condition on it that the, on the deck from 4 to 7:30 be limited, as we did with Ralph, limited
It's only fair.
to two or less
Two or
musicians.
fewer musicians.
Put
yeah,
that
to be
condition on it,
determined.
and then if the Rock Tide wants to have a different set of conditions, then they can come to us and make the case. If they are okay with that, then it goes forward and we don't need to talk about it again.
Prefer you do that rather than hold up the license.
Yeah, and that would
That would let it go forward.
let it go.
Yeah.
Yep, comments from the public?
I'm just,
Dawn?
is Rock Tide aware that these complaints are happening? Because we spoke to them as, to be neighborly. Okay.
That's- Last year, they certainly were aware.
They're sure, they're surely aware, yep.
I liked your idea, Bill, about being held accountable, and if something happens, then things would be taken back. Do you look to have that in place this season?
Yes.
What would be your goal, and would you have like a set number? That doesn't seem fair, and would the building establishments get told that, you know, this was coming? I mean, how would you look to format all this?
A little bit off topic, but with the leeway.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is a policy of the selectmen, so we can do that, and I would anticipate having further discussions among the selectmen, maybe in a workshop, maybe at the next meeting.
You guys do like a private workshop, or is that a public one?
Any meeting we have is public.
Okay.
And what I would suggest is that after some number of separate complaints, and again, I would count 5 complaints from 5 different people in a different category as 5 complaints from one person. But let's say after 5 complaints, we would notify the business and say, you know, you're getting a lot of complaints. You might want to work with your neighbors and tone it down. That would be the first step. That's what I would suggest. And then the second step is, if we continue to get complaints, is for the board to meet, and if the complaints are deemed to be viable and at the upper end, then we would suspend their license for some period of time, like a week.
Yeah, to get all of it. Well, what would you think, just off the top, and I know a workshop will be coming now, so that's helpful, but what kind of details would you look to say, like, you know, these 5 complaints have come in, and you're saying, well, give them a chance. I mean, what are you looking for a time frame there? Because it's a short season, you know?
Oh,
So
I
you're
think
thinking like, would you, like another weekend?
Yeah,
Would you
another
say,
week,
like-
yeah.
Yeah.
That would,
Yeah.
that's just,
But yeah,
would be in my
You just
mind.
want to do the right
Yeah.
thing by both parties, I agree. It's the way to go. All right. You'd look to have that in place by Windjammers? I mean, is that too tight of a schedule? I don't know how these things.
No,
work.
we could have it, but again, it's a policy, it's not a hard and fast rule.
It just gives you a chance to enforce and make everybody
But,
accountable.
but it, you know, the real reason to do it is to send a signal that we're serious about this, and we want to reach a balance. It could be that we get 5 complaints and the select board looks at it and all the levels are 55 dB, and we'd say, you know, I understand it's annoying you, but it really seems permissible within what our codes say. We can't rewrite our codes, certainly.
But it's nice that you have this as an option. Thanks for looking into that.
Tom?
Tom Perkins, Blue Bay Harbor, representing my brother Jim, who lives next to the rock tide. I don't know much about decibel levels, but I have been on his deck on a Sunday afternoon, and it's impossible to have a conversation. You can't even hear yourself think. So one of the things I was really hoping was that somebody would be here from the rock tide so that I could ask them what they plan on doing differently this season than they did last season. Really unfortunate that they're not here. I think one of the benefits, quote unquote, of tabling this maybe till next week's meeting or whatever the case may be, I'm speaking for my brother. Another week or so, he'll be here full time. His primary residence is now Atlantic Avenue, and you can hear it right from the horse's mouth. I know he'd really appreciate being heard.
Helen?
On some of these, you gotta remember, this is summer. And Booth Bay Harbor, I've been here over 50 years. And I'm one of the ones that used to frequent downtown years ago. And there was a lot of music, and I know Chief Harsh knows that. And, but it's only for a short time. And I feel any one of us could endure that short time. These are businesses that thrive on getting things. We have there's a lot of people that show up here in the summer. This is how a lot of people make their living. And it really is. And I know some of the music can get a little testy now and then. If I'm by myself, you can ask my son, I crank the stereo up or whatever, if it's a song I like or something like that. But when I lived on Bay Street, I heard music from the reggae cruise. I loved it, but it didn't cost me a thing. I could sit there and listen. It didn't cost me a thing to hear the Irish singers from Brown Brothers. I sat on my step outside and listened. It was beautiful music. But just keep in mind, neighbor is neighbors. And everybody's trying to work together. And that's where we all have to come together, just that short time. The rest of the year, we're quiet most of the time. You know, but this is a summer and a tourist area. You might as well get used to it. I did.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we know when their current license expires?
I think.
Yeah, the Bachelor's is the 31st. I'm not sure about the special amusement.
It's probably one and the same. We tend to do them on the same night.
Yeah, and I would hate to postpone it and have them not be
So,
able to play.
I'd like to move that we approve this application and what I'd like to do really is look up the words that we used for Ralph 2 weeks ago, but without that in front of me, with the stipulation that there be no more than 2 musicians performing at any one time. I think that was the sense of what we did a couple weeks ago.
For the 4 o'clock to 7:30?
I would have said for all of those times.
Well, I think the difficulty is the Sunday afternoon was a larger group last year. And I think at times at the Lobster Wharf, they have a larger group, don't they? Isn't it sometimes more than 2? Down the, yeah, the one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that we just approved from,
You know,
you
one
know,
thing,
same-
Ralph
same
volunteered
timeframes.
that too. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
something that we came up
Right.
with. Ralph did, and we thought it was a good idea. I don't know if you want to get into that.
so,
So you have a motion, but I haven't heard
I
a
haven't
second.
heard a second.
I don't exactly know, I mean, I'll amend my motion to include only 4 to 7:30 during the week, if that will,
I would second that.
On the weekdays.
yeah, 4 to 7:30, 7 days a week is what the application asks for.
until, right, based upon the limited information that we have right now.
Yeah.
Because no one is here representing the
And this
business.
will allow this to go forward
Mhm.
and not hold him up.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay, I think I heard.
I think I heard Bill
I think I heard a
say-
second. Okay, further discussion? The audience.
Just one quick comment. There were times when they were playing in that 1 to 4, which we couldn't hear ourselves talk 2 properties away. Admiral Perkins, he was unbelievable over there. But there were also boats that would tie up to our dock. You just sit there from 1 to 4 and listen to music in the boat. I had to go down all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I myself on several Sunday afternoons heard very loud music and certainly at Admiral Perkins, it was, being that he's a neighbor, it was extremely loud. But it was loud at 59 Atlantic Avenue also, but not loud enough so that it really bothered anybody there, but you could certainly hear it. And other people are working in at that time. I mean, just because it's Sunday afternoon doesn't mean other people aren't working in the harbor at different types of jobs. So, anyway, okay, any other comments? Then I'll look for a vote. So all in favor of the motion? Okay, and I'm going to abstain. So the motion carries. So I'm going to write on here underneath where we sign, well, in the conditions section, what we're agreeing to. That's the original, okay, great. So, 2. Okay, great, thank you. Palmer, you're up. You're here to give us an update on the refuse district.
Yeah, we have some good news about electricity. You may have recalled a couple of years ago, the program was put into effect and finally started last year. Solar panels installed on the roof of our new building as well as jointly with the town of Booth Bay, which occupies a lot next door from their public works building, with a private enterprise. The first report in at the end of the first year, this is combined numbers for the town of Booth Bay. as well as the refuse district. 98.5% of the electricity used was generated on site.
Nice.
Great job.
If
Wow.
you look at your electricity bill, it's kind of tricky because you don't pay as much for electricity as you do to get it to you. The transmission cost is something there is no control over unless you're generating it right there and you have no transmission cost. I checked some bills. January of 1914, 1914. I've been watching too many war movies this year. 2014, the bill for the refuse district that month was $740.97. January of this year, the bill was $69.16.
Whoa, good job.
We still pay electricity bills because we got a 2 cent per kilowatt hour reduction in cooperation with this enterprise that installed all of the solar cells. At the end of 10 years, they become ours, and so forth. You may have read in the paper last Thursday, the local paper, that your district, I don't say ours, it's everybody's really, received the MRRA Program of the Year award. MRRA is a group representing all of the refuse districts in the state. So it's a judgment by your peers. The man that recommended us for this is an official of the DEP in Augusta, whose visits to our district some years ago were feared greatly. He came in unannounced once a year and made notes, and you heard about it in the mail and found out what your fine was. And, since then, he is, in recent years, been paying visits once every 3 years because he trusts us. It's improved the management and the crew down there. And you have a fine crew there, have been responsible for this. He also recommends to towns in Maine that want to start their own refuse removal and recycling operation, that they go down to our district and see how it's done. And from this man, there's some praise, because he does white glove inspections and he trusts us. Some other interesting information of import as far as money goes. This is from our March meeting, actually. Before Jim Chaosis left Bouquet, he locked in the fuel prices. You know, we have a joint fuel consortium. The ambulance service, the town of Bouquet, refuse district, all buy their fuel from that one facility. $2.38 a gallon for 2 years. Rough estimate is it should save us $30,000 to $50,000 a year. One more thing with the upcoming town meeting. I remember some 15 years ago when the refuse district was in some dire straits. It seems like they'd really fouled up their accounting. And they came to the towns and said, good grief, we're in the middle of our fiscal year, we can't finish, we made some big mistakes. This may sound familiar to you, not from the refuse district. And the town said, well, you have a mistake, solve it. No. End of ballgame. They got through it somehow. Any questions? I just wanted to keep you up to date.
Great news, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It is. You may, I don't know, I've followed the solar generation quite a bit, and also wind power. Other parts of the country, watch out for your utilities. There are some places where installations will come in and cut the price so much that the utility tries to apply a tax to the customers for the electricity that they're not buying from the utility.
So with those kinds of bills, what's the return on the investment that you made in the panels? How?
Our investment was signing a paper allowing the people to install the solar cells.
Oh, really?
They become ours after 10 years.
Uh-huh. So there was no, you didn't buy them, there was no purchase?
No, we were sort of more than a test
Trial.
case. I mean, it's
Beta site.
pretty proven technology. And
else's money behind it.
by mere geographical juxtaposition, we had these two big flat surfaces, I mean, they're
Yeah.
peaked roofs,
Sure.
aimed ideally at the solar passage,
Right.
winter and summer, with no surrounding vegetation. These people were entrepreneurial, and they were risking tremendous amount of money in making this installation.
Well, that's terrific news, and I look forward to the assessment to the towns being reduced.
Well, I tell you, wood chips were up good. You never know, I'll say it every time. We go with the economy
Yeah.
as far as selling stuff.
Right.
In the big ice storm of some years back, the wood chip business went down the drain for about 3 years. There were so many trees down that were being chopped up and sold. And in 2008, the big economic downturn in the country resulted in less steel being manufactured. A certain percentage of new steel is the old tin cans that you recycle down there. It gets melted down as a percentage of the alloy. So when the economy goes down and they don't make as many automobiles or build as many bridges or whatever it is, the market for that goes down. It's quite an enterprise. Some people might wonder about the $740 electric bill that we had last year. You don't realize that there are some very powerful motors moving underground as you dump your facility.
Yeah.
Oh,
That worm gear that mashes all the messy, smelly stuff that compact. Plus, we have 2 other compactors in the recycling building for different sizes of recyclable material.
well, it's great news. Thank you very much for your report.
You're
Super. So we'll move on to public forum. Most of our public has left. All right, seeing no public forum issues, I'll look for.
I just
do we-
had one question.
Yes.
Where do we stand on the wayfaring signs and the work?
I got an email from Tony today. Tony and I met, and we sort of come to an agreement on the type of sign it is.
Yeah.
Where Tony wanted to take it upon himself to look into getting the rights for the map that's similar to the walking
Yeah.
map stuff. He's getting delays on his end from getting that information. So I'm
Okay.
having lunch with him and Dan Breyer tomorrow.
All
I'll
right.
bring it up again tomorrow.
I did take a look at the walking map, and I
Excellent.
agree with you. I think it's a real good fit.
Recognizable.
Yeah.
It's a good branding.
It would be a nice fit.
Yeah.
So, all right, please just keep
I
pushing
keep
that along.
Yeah, because I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great, good. All right, so I'll look for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
I move you probably meant that we
Under-
wanted to go under MRSA,
Yes.
Section 4056A.
Yeah, I did.
Personnel matters, yes,
Exactly
okay. All in favor of
what
going
Bill
into
said.
executive session? Okay, at 8:08.